Hi, remember my second channel? I'm currently uploading there a lot more frequently now, so if you are interested, consider subscribing. Link is always in the description. I greatly appreciate it. So another day, another manga or anime becoming successful or popular, and then the toxicity floods in. The absolute abomination, nightmare fuel that is Twitter and any other social media platform that harbors it. Here we are. Unfortunately, eventually this was going to happen, as anything becoming popular always increases with negativity and toxicity. It's a pretty standard thing at this point. But I think the contrast between how wholesome Spy Family is compared to that toxicity is super jarring and a lot more acknowledgeable, right? You probably see it more frequently because of it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the past handful of weeks has been a super turbulent time for the Spy Family community, so to speak. And putting aside the bait, the farming interactions, the bot-like accounts that hate on it just for the fun of it, there is a genuine dislike for this story. A lot of people like to call it overrated, a lot of people like to hate on it, and then there's a subsection that has some absolute garbage, sewer water-like posts. Stuff that is absolutely abhorrent, just disgusting. All of this is due to the very popular reception of Spy Family's anime. The series is doing extremely well. If you are a fan of this series, if you absolutely love the manga, the anime is a great, beautiful adaptation for it. There's a whole lot of love, appreciation, and creativity poured into this anime adaptation, and it is quite literally exactly what you would want from it. So of course, as the fan base gets bigger, as it grows, the increase in toxicity and all of this other negativity starts to come out. I think one train of thought that has some shred of genuineness behind it is a lot of people claim this series to be overrated, or it shouldn't be as successful as it is, or it shouldn't be as appreciated as it is because it's nothing special. Spy Family isn't anything to be this revolutionary or groundbreaking. And every time I see a post like this that seems to have some sort of genuineness behind it, I always question that response. Why? Why does it have to be extraordinary? Why does it have to be unique or revolutionary or something that's never been done before to be praised as much as it is? Why can't a story just be fun or cutesy or enjoyable to be worthy of that praise? So here I am, confused. For me personally, I think there's a lot of odd things that go into calling something overrated. There's a lot of stipulations or a lot of subcategories that it spirals into, right? If you see something being praised and you yourself don't enjoy it, you're probably going to have some sort of negative response to it. It's a weird human nature type of thing that I think social media propels a lot further than you would actually expect. This thing that you dislike already is being praised and hyped up and really enjoyed by many, so a response to that potentially is you wanting to bring it down. And if you aren't in that type of mindset, you might try to mitigate it instead by calling it usually overrated. So you might appreciate what Spy Family does and saying that it's good or that it's great, but in the same sentence say that it doesn't deserve the praise that it's getting, which entirely is your own interpretation, but is also a pretty weird response. If you can recognize that it's good or potentially even great, you must be able to recognize that other people too are going to see that and are going to praise it for that. I think the last thing people do is watch something, recognize how great it is, and then think to themselves, well, should I praise it this much because it might seem overrated? Should I praise it this much because it's only great and not extraordinary? I don't think many people go through that mindset when they watch things. Obviously, there is a ton of variety and once again, subsections that it spirals into. The thought process is super all over the place. Something that I find interesting, but it's very difficult to obviously explore mentally because of how convoluted it can actually get. I just find it odd that some of the most disgusting stuff that I have seen personally on Twitter and other social media comes from one of the most unproblematic stories that is currently within the medium. To add on to this, I think there's a couple of elements that flow into it that a lot of people aren't necessarily used to seeing or doing per se. One, it is a very difficult story to compare to anything else. Not because you can't compare it, but because it doesn't fall into the standard conversation that a lot of people have on Twitter to farm interactions or to farm negativity. You definitely can still do it, but comparing it to Weekly Shonen Jump stories just makes you seem nonsensical or just silly for the most part, which is where a lot of that hatred farming or bot farming, whatever you want to, just anything to do with interactions usually stems towards. Have you ever seen anyone calling this series from Weekly Shonen Jump series mid or peak or better than this other series with no context whatsoever? That's what I'm talking about. Secondly, Spy Family was extremely popular before it got its anime, and it did not have this type of negativity, nor did it have this type of viral viral exposure. It did somewhat break records. It did become a pillar of a digital magazine, site, platform, whatever you want to call it, and it sold within the top 10 of last year before its anime was even released. This is a manga that has gone against the grain, that has gone against all odds, and has become one of the most successful series currently. And it's not because of its anime. It's a digital only manga that's published bi-weekly. That's one chapter every 2 weeks and still has become super successful. Its anime has capitalized on that and has spread and blown up the fandom even further, where you will most likely see it jump very high within the top 10 most selling manga this year. I think before it was 7 or 8 last year, so I wouldn't be surprised if you've seen it in the top 5, potentially even the top 3. Putting aside this, I think one thing that I find rather funny about this whole situation and how overhated Spy Family has become, it adds variety. I get popular series will always have a lot of hatred behind it, but one of the funniest reasons I find for it to be hated is that it's different than a lot of other things that are becoming popular. It's not within the Weekly Shonen Jump spotlight. It's not within the Battle Shonen spotlight. It's not within even the seinen spotlight, so to speak. There's nothing dark or gritty or kind of normalized about it. It's just a simple, slightly romantic, slice of life, beautiful, dynamic storytelling experience. This is variety. If anything, if you are a fan of manga, if you are a fan of anime, if you are somewhat even within the community, you want a story like this to be successful. You want it to have all of this attention because so many people are seeing this story thrive and so many more stories are going to try and replicate it. If you see a massive increase for a story like Spy Family, you as an author or a company or a business obviously want to try and fit into that category. Because something as simple as saying, well, this new manga or anime is similar to Spy Family can bring you more sales. This is something that Weekly Shonen Jump themselves have been doing for generations now. As soon as something becomes popular, they will try and mimic it and copy and paste it as much as they can until it dies out. When it comes to the community, however, and the reception towards it, I feel like you're hating it for the wrong reasons. It's fine to dislike it. It's fine to not enjoy what the story is doing. That's perfectly okay. But hating on it so desperately or drastically because you think it's overrated, if anything, you want it to be overrated so we get more stories similar to it, so we get more variety, so we get something that isn't just plagued with battle manga, that isn't just plagued with Weekly Shonen Jump stories. We want diversity and popularity, right? We want more variety in what manga is doing good and what anime is being well received. Of course, people aren't going to sit here and overthink it. A little bit too drastic. They hate it and go on with their day, probably. I, for one, am more than happy, proud, and honored to see Spy Family's reception, its growth, its blow up again into popularity. It has captured the hearts of the world without being anything extraordinary, without being something extravagant or unique. It just has a powerful story that's doing exactly what it wants to do with a beautiful dynamic, and that's all it has to be. If anything, this is proof for a lot of people that your story doesn't have to be the most groundbreaking conceptual work that has never been seen before. It doesn't have to have the most beautiful, flashy, over-the-top animation that is so fluid and crisp to carry it to stardom. Don't get me wrong, the animation is very pretty, it's very beautiful. They have done a phenomenal job with it, but it's not piggybacking it to stardom. It's not piggybacking it to fame and popularity. Spy Family is being itself, doing what it does best, and is becoming a very massive name for the industry, for the community, for the future to come. And I couldn't be more happy for it. I think it deserves that. It's come from a pretty turbulent time and it's proved its worth in its manga format, and now it's doing it again in its anime. This provides us in the future with more variety, more stories trying to expand outside of what is usually given to us, what is usually the most popular of popular. It's a great time to be an anime and manga fan. This response or popularity for it is not unwarranted. You could definitely see it rising and building over time because it put in the work for it, just being itself in a magazine that was not popular, published in a way that is not normal, and it still made it here to this point. Conclusion wise, this makes me worried for other stories, especially one that is somewhat just around the corner, coming out later this year, Chainsaw Man. This manga already has there's quite a diverse reception towards it, putting it lightly. And I know when the anime comes out, it's probably going to be all over the place. It's going to be very drastic. It's going to peak or escalate into many disgusting conversations or topics and endlessly being compared to every other story to ever exist. For your own sanity, I would highly recommend just to try and ignore it. I feel bad because I think of the people that want to get into that side of the community, that want to communicate or have conversations with people, and they have to see this disgusting side of it. And I'm talking about the worst of the worst. Like, these posts don't even seem like they're from humans. Just people that do not care about anything and will post the most abhorrent stuff you will see on that site. All I can say is that if you manage to come across it, don't be discouraged. Report it, don't recommend it, block it, whatever you have to do to not actively see it, and continue to do your best to communicate with people that you feel comfortable with. The community is very vast and open, and there's a lot of people within it, and in response, a lot of people are going to have great conversations with you. Just know that people like to argue a lot on social media, and if you're not that type of person, if you ain't looking for that, just try to avoid it completely. I wish nothing for the best for Spy Family's success, its popularity, its skyrocket into stardom once again, and I pray for my own sanity and for yours as well that Chainsaw Man's community and its response to it is at least somewhat avoidable, that I can at least turn off or not see while scrolling the amount of garbage that will come from certain conversations. That's not even mentioning the other stuff that's coming out this year. Bleach, Hell's Paradise potentially, Blue Lock, I believe. There's always going to be some sort of facet of hatred within there somewhere. It just depends how loud it is and how much unnecessary traction it brings forward. Endtime. So with that, welcome to the end of the video. If you have made it this far, thank you. I appreciate you. To spin this around, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Spy Family. How are you feeling about the anime? How do you feel about the manga? Are you happy with everything that's been going on with it? Are you happy with the adaptation? Are you happy to see it thrive and bloom into something very special while being itself? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. But with that, I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Drink plenty of water, and I will see you within the next one. Goodbye.